Hello and welcome to the Foundation IT podcast. I'm Toby Skerritt and today I'm talking to Vadim Vladimirskiy, CEO of Nerdio, about Microsoft's Windows 365 product. Vadim, welcome.
Thanks, Toby. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, well, thank you very much for taking the time to join us. For those of our listeners who don't know, could you please just give us a quick overview of what Nerdio aims to do?
Certainly, I'd be happy to do that. So Nerdio is a software company that empowers MSPs and IT professionals to build successful cloud practices at Microsoft Azure with a specific focus on virtual desktops. So that initially started with technologies like remote desktop services, RDS, evolved into WVD, which is now known as AVD, and most recently, the Microsoft Cloud PC product. So we help MSPs and IT professionals deploy, manage, and optimize those virtual desktop services in the Microsoft Cloud.
Fantastic, thank you. And it sounds like business is going well at the moment. I believe you've recently celebrated your 1 millionth licensed user, is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, we just recently reached 1 million users under management across the various products that we have, which obviously a pretty exciting milestone for us. Certainly accelerated by the pandemic over the last 18 months or so. But it is definitely exciting to see a lot of the growth in the virtual desktop space.
Absolutely, yeah. Congratulations on that. And what sort of feedback are you getting from your users or from the IT professionals who are adopting Nerdio? What's their kind of favorite feature that you're finding?
There's really several things that IT professionals come to us for initially. Initially it's all about cost savings and optimizations. They're looking to make sure that their virtual desktop deployments in Azure aren't costing them more than they need to, right? So any infrastructure that doesn't need to be running when it's unused should be automatically shut down and deprovisioned. And Nerdio provides a pretty advanced auto-scaling engine to accomplish that. So I would say that's probably the number one reason IT pros come to us initially. We also have a feature called image management, which is also something that's really popular. But then once these individuals get into the product and they start managing Azure Virtual Desktop through Nerdio Manager, they realize, the wealth of other features, other automations, cost optimization technologies, and many other things that our products have to offer.
Absolutely. And I have to say, from a personal perspective, whenever I implement Azure Virtual Desktop now, the first thing I do is install Nerdio and use Nerdio to configure all of those components rather than having to do that from scratch in the Microsoft Azure console. I just find it a much simpler process.
That's great to hear.
So today, our main focus was to speak about Microsoft's new Windows 365 Cloud PC service. There's a lot of excitement around this product, and it marks a bit of a change from Microsoft in the way that they're targeting cloud-based PC services to users and customers. From your perspective, who's this service aimed at?
It's a great question, and I think Microsoft is aiming the service at really growing the desktop virtualization market overall, right? I think if you talk to Microsoft and you look at their messaging around this product, they really like it to be compared to a physical PC rather to another virtual desktop alternative, right? So they're really looking at it as a market expanding technology, rather one that causes people who maybe are on Azure Virtual Desktop to all of a sudden start using Cloud PC instead. And they've created, several SKUs and 2 different editions or versions of the Cloud PC product that I think targets different audiences. There is the version called Business, Cloud PC Business, or Windows 365 Business, which is very simple to deploy and very sort of easy to manage because there's really nothing to it. There's no management kind of interface for the Business Edition. And I think it's more equivalent to like buying a standalone desktop from a Best Buy or whatever the local equivalent is of a computer store, and just putting it in your office or in your home and installing your own software, and the user is the administrator, right? So it's that kind of entry-level standalone super easy to deploy and manage type of a PC. And that's what that Cloud PC Business Edition is all about. The other version of Cloud PC, called Cloud PC Enterprise, is, as the name implies, is targeted at organizations that have an IT department, that have policies and networking requirements and security kind of requirements. And that version of the Cloud PC product integrates tightly into a company's existing Azure footprint, specifically at the networking level. It plugs into an existing network, so all of the traffic can be routed through the existing networking infrastructure. And that's really targeted at larger organizations. And what we're really seeing is with Cloud PC, especially when we're talking about enterprise-sized deployments, an organization will often have both types of virtual desktops. They'll have both the Azure Virtual Desktop for some of their use cases, and they'll have Cloud PC for other use cases. So it's not really an either-or technology. It's a technology, Cloud PC, that extends the scenarios in which a virtual desktop becomes a good way to enable things like hybrid work, remote work, all of the things that we've been very well familiar with over the last 18 months.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So the obvious comparison then is the Azure Virtual Desktop platform, which has been around for a while. How would you see Azure Cloud or Microsoft Cloud PC comparing to Azure Virtual Desktop?
Yeah, another great question. There's really multiple dimensions to think about when it comes to comparing these two services. So I would say, to start out, Cloud PC is actually based on the same technology stack as Azure Virtual Desktop. Now, what does that mean? That means that the user experience, so the client app that the user would use on their Windows, Mac, or mobile device, or even through the web portal, is actually the exact same application that an AVD user would use. Also on the back end, the diagnostic services and all of the gateways. So basically the services that Microsoft hosts on behalf of its AVD customers are the same ones that are used by the Cloud PC service. The operating systems are obviously the same. So really the big difference comes in at the management layer, right? Where the IT administrator interacts with the system. So where the user interacts with the system, the two are completely equivalent. Where the IT administrator interacts with it is different. So if we kind of look at the IT admin experience dimension and try to compare and contrast the two, with Azure Virtual Desktop, you manage everything in the Azure portal if you're doing it natively, or through Nerdio Manager if you're using a tool like ours. But it is an Azure service, as the name implies. So all of the management of networking, host pools, session hosts, user assignments, all of that is done through the Azure portal. On the other hand, a Cloud PC deployment is managed through what Microsoft calls MEM, or Microsoft Endpoint Manager, which used to be called Intune. And that is more of a SaaS type of a management platform that's part of the Microsoft 365 ecosystem of products. So as opposed to it being an Azure product, it's now a Microsoft 365 interface, just like managing Azure Active Directory, license assignment in Microsoft Admin Center. It's a similar type of concept. So I would say from an admin experience, that's a pretty significant difference between the two products. The other big difference, I would say, is the way that it is packaged and sold. So Azure Virtual Desktop is an Azure service, and as a result, it's priced based on consumption. So you don't really know how much a particular deployment is going to cost you until you deploy it and it runs for a month, and then you get your invoice and it says, okay, you've used this many hours of this VM and that many hours of this disk, this much bandwidth, etc. It's added all together, and that is now the cost of an AVD deployment. Cloud PC, Windows 365, is priced exactly like other Microsoft 365 products, meaning they are licensed products that are assigned to a user on a user-by-user basis, which means the price is predictable, it's fixed, and there is no variability month to month. So if you have 10 Cloud PC licenses, you assign them to 10 users, you're going to pay for 10 of those licenses whether those users log in or not, whether they shut their machine down or not, it really doesn't matter. It's a fixed per user per month price, which I think is super significant in helping drive the adoption of this technology in the greater market, because people understand licensed products and how they're sold and how to budget for them really well, because that's really how the SaaS world works. Azure is a bit more challenging because it's consumption based. It requires, tools that can help you estimate what the cost is going to be, tracking those costs, making sure there isn't any waste in that utilization. So it's a bit more complex. So we said, IT admin experience, I would say, is difference number one. The packaging being fixed price is number two. The third difference between Azure Virtual Desktop and Cloud PC is the fact that Azure Virtual Desktop is most commonly deployed as a multi-session environment, meaning you have a group of users that may be sharing a virtual machine all at the same time, right? So they're logging into the same machine, they each get a virtual session, but the operating system and the set of applications that are running are all being shared by multiple users at the same time, which in AVD world is called multi-session version of Windows 10. Cloud PC is very deliberately created to be a single session experience. And a single session experience, also called a personal desktop or a persistent desktop or a dedicated desktop. There are different terms in the industry to refer to the type of use case, but the single or the personal desktop experience is drastically different from a multi-session one. And the reason for that is because to enable multi-session, you need to take into account many other things. For example, profile redirection, things like FS logics, things like noisy neighbor type problems where you have one user that's consuming all the resources, making everyone else run slower. There's all sorts of things that you need to worry about when dealing with multi-session deployments, which increases the complexity and the skill level necessary to manage AVD environments with multi-session, which is really where Nerdio comes in and simplifying a lot of those complexities. When you look at Cloud PC, because it's a standalone dedicated personal desktop, managing it is no different than managing a physical device, right? So in the physical world, each user has their machine, it's their applications, they're usually the only one logging into their PC. So a physical PC versus a cloud PC from a management experience is no different, because it doesn't have FS logics, it doesn't have other users sharing the operating system, so none of those complexities apply. So I would say those are really the three differences. The IT admin experience being Azure Portal versus MEM, pricing being consumption-based versus fixed price, and then the complexities of multi-session versus single session are the major differences between the two.
Great, thank you. That's a really thorough explanation, so thank you for that. So would it be fair to say then that for medium to large organizations who have an in-house IT or some IT management provision, Azure Virtual Desktop is probably the right direction because they could achieve some economies of scale, which the platform inherently provides? For smaller organizations, Cloud PC may be the way to go?
Perhaps. I mean, that's definitely one way to sort of segment the product. So the way we think about it is on a use case by use case basis, right? So let me give you some examples in which use cases Windows 365 Cloud PC is the clear choice, and some where AVD is the clear choice. So if you have a customer that has, let's say, less than 5 or even less than 10 desktops that they need, a Windows 365 Business Cloud PC is definitely the way to go. Why? Because with AVD, you need to worry about, Active Directory, Azure Files, all of the things that are necessary even to get one desktop up and running. Whereas with Cloud PC, there is none of those prerequisites. You simply assign a license, 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, the user has a fully built desktop, totally isolated from everyone else. So in super small deployments, I think Windows 365 is definitely the way to go, but specifically the business edition, not the enterprise one, because that one does have several requirements. Then one of the things that Microsoft talks about with Cloud PC and why they introduced it is because they've noticed that, especially in the enterprise, there was a big discrepancy between the skills that were available within IT organizations. For example, VDI and kind of your traditional desktop virtualization skills were pretty rare, whereas your traditional endpoint management skills through Intune and Endpoint Manager were very common, right? So you have, large organizations with lots of administrators and IT professionals who are very much used to managing their physical devices with Endpoint Manager. And adding Cloud PC into that mix is just an easy way to apply that same set of skills, same concepts to virtual desktops, just like you apply to physical desktops. So the way I would summarize all that is I would say if an organization has no VDI experience and has strong endpoint manager experience, then considering Cloud PC would be sort of an easier and a much shallower learning curve for them than going with AVD, where they're going to have to get skilled up on that. You can also have an organization that may not have an existing Azure footprint. Maybe they are an Office 365 customer, but maybe they're running their infrastructure in another cloud, in GCP or AWS, whatever the case may be, or maybe they just don't have an infrastructure as a service presence in Azure, and they don't really want to build one. All they want to do is just add desktops into the mix, in which case, again, Windows 365 is an easier way to go than Azure Virtual Desktop that requires an entire Azure footprint deployment to happen. And I would say the final scenario, or maybe one or two more where Windows 365 makes sense, is where you have very, let's call them power or super users that need lots of resources all to themselves. When someone needs a dedicated machine because they're running heavy computation or GPU or various resource intensive tasks, then Cloud PC just becomes a more cost-effective way to do it because of the way Microsoft priced it. So if someone needs a big machine, Cloud PC is definitely the way to go. Now, on the other, Sarah, go ahead.
No, thank you. Was there another scenario you were going to mention?
I think that's sort of, those are on the Cloud PC side. On the Azure Virtual Desktop side, there are some clear winner scenarios for AVD. For example, if someone wants to publish remote apps, right? Remote apps is a way to provide a virtual application rather than a full desktop session, which is something that you can only do with AVD. So someone has the requirement for remote apps, automatically is going to need to use AVD rather than Cloud PC. Yeah. And then ultimately, because of the multi-session capability of Azure Virtual Desktop, if someone has the skills and is willing to kind of deal with the complexity or use tools like Nerdio Manager to help them manage that complexity, they can get a significantly lower per user per month price point because of all the flexibility and the multi-user session capability of AVD. So AVD is generally much cheaper when deployed in a multi-session kind of way.
Great, thank you. That makes sense. So you guys have recently integrated Cloud PC management functionality into the Nerdio platform. What benefits does that offer to Nerdio customers?
So, our thesis and our thinking about the way the market is going to evolve is that these two are complementary technologies, as I've mentioned, and organizations are going to deploy them side by side. And if they're going to be used side by side within the same organization, the benefits I've mentioned earlier also become the challenges, because now you have different set of skills, different set of platforms, different ways to think about different, Cloud PC versus AVD, and it just increases complexity rather than reducing it. So the way we see the world evolving is that if organizations are going to use them, both technologies side by side, they need a management platform and a management interface that unifies that management experience. And that's what we've tried to deliver with Nerdio Manager. So Nerdio Manager supports both AVD and Cloud PC, and lets administrators manage both of them in a very consistent way. For example, if you create an image and you continually manage your image by installing apps, applying patches, that image can be consumed by both services without having to maintain two separate images and manage them in different ways. Same thing with things like scripted actions or application installation. So all the various policies that an administrator needs to manage on an ongoing basis can be done in the same single UI in a consistent way without having to duplicate efforts in different platforms. And I think we're finding that that's resonating very well with our customers who are, traditionally AVD customers who are now looking to extend into Cloud PC. We've created a very simple process of just checking a box and enabling Cloud PC functionality and reusing all of the work they've already put into their AVD environment, use the same images, same application policies, same scripted actions to extend their management abilities into Windows 365.
That's great, thank you. And do you think that there will be additional Cloud PC functionality coming to the Nerdio platform in future?
For sure. I mean, we've been working very closely with the Microsoft engineering team on the Cloud PC side. They've asked us to help them kind of co-develop the service and test APIs and integrate into our products, well over a year ago. So we've been very close to that team, and we have good visibility into what's coming on the roadmap. And there's going to be lots coming to Cloud PC. And by extension, all of those features will appear in Nerdio Manager, both our enterprise and our MSP product, to help our customers take advantage of those features. I'll give you one example. They just recently introduced the ability to resize and end the grace period of Cloud PCs, and that's already in the Nerdio Manager product for those who want to take advantage of it.
Great, thank you. From a foundation IT perspective, we've been using Nerdio for quite a while. All of our deployments at this point are Azure Virtual Desktop based because obviously Cloud PC is a new product and it fitted our client requirements. We have clients using both personal desktops, GPU enabled personal desktops, and session host environments. But we do really like the integrated functionality of the Cloud PC products. We like the Windows 365 suite and its integration into the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So it's certainly something we'll be investigating further. Do you think that changes in the Cloud PC delivery model in future might change the way that the product functions? Do you think there's a possibility of introducing some kind of session host functionality, or am I kind of shooting in the wrong direction there?
Well, I certainly don't have any concrete knowledge on this, but if I were to speculate, sort of given the product direction and the value that Microsoft talks about, being that it's simple to manage just like a physical desktop, I would say that introducing multi-user capability into Cloud PC is just going to make it way too similar to AVD, and I think will defeat a lot of the benefits as to why they've created this product to begin with. So I'd be surprised if multi-session comes to Cloud PC, but you never know. It really depends what the market needs and what Microsoft decides to build.
Absolutely. Is there anything else that you think would benefit the current Cloud PC product or that you'd like to see introduced?
Microsoft has already announced several really, I think, important things. Number one would be Azure AD join, so the native Azure AD join rather than the reliance on an Active Directory with hybrid AD join, which is required today for the enterprise product. The business product doesn't need that. So I think that's going to be huge because that means someone without network presence in Azure and without a domain controller can start using an enterprise Cloud PC just as easily as they can with a business version. So I think that's going to be huge. I think GPU SKUs, so versions of the product that support GPU are going to be very popular because we are seeing customers, inquiring about that quite a bit. And then just, more and more integrations and optimizations for Office. Scott Manchester, who's the engineering leader of the Windows 365 team was on a webinar with me a couple of months ago, and he mentioned that there's even functionality that is going to be coming to Office that's going to be exclusive to Cloud PC. So basically, you'll have some features in Cloud PC environments when it comes to Office that may even, exist only there and not for physical devices. And it kind of makes sense because both products run in the same set of data centers. They're well connected. So if you think about all of the caching and the space consumption that Outlook, for example, takes up when we install Exchange Online and synchronize all of that data, maybe in a Cloud PC world that may not be necessary because of how close those services are from a latency and a bandwidth perspective. So I'm looking forward to how this service evolves. It's certainly going to evolve rather quickly, and the market reception has been great so far.
Great, thank you. Yeah, those sound like very interesting possibilities there. So I'd be also keen to see how that evolves over time. So throughout the launch of the Cloud PC product, Nerdio have been providing some of the best comparative content for AVD versus Cloud PC. So much so, in fact, that I've even seen Microsoft representatives sharing Nerdio's infographics to provide an illustration of how the two products compare. How does that make you feel?
I mean, it's great. It's great to see that that everyone's finding our content useful. We certainly put a lot of time, effort, and thought into it. I think we're in a unique position, having both been in the MSP industry for many years and now helping enterprise customers, with both of these solutions, both AVD and Cloud PC. We try to take a perspective of a customer or an MSP and, what are the questions they would want to ask? How, do we take the information that Microsoft provides and position it in a way that makes most sense to our audience? And Microsoft is a very big organization. They have different groups that are responsible for different products, and their product marketing and messaging is sort of focused on those products specifically, whereas we don't have that limitation. We can look at it holistically, really put things side by side, compare them across different dimensions. And I guess I'm very glad to see that that the ecosystem has found the content useful, and we're going to continue producing as much as customers ask us for.
Fantastic. Vadim, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I really appreciate it. If anybody listening would like to hear more about Cloud PC or the Nerdio product, please contact us at Foundation IT. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Toby.